Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cece's Corner. I know it's been quite a while. I know it's been a relatively long time, and probably the break that I announced came as a little bit of a surprise. Not that the regular listeners or anything like this, but I think that I've been pretty consistent in uploading on Sundays. So we're right back to the regularly scheduled program now that I've made more time and also found some focus to really organize my schedule well in order to be able to make these videos on time so that they can be posted on Sundays. I wanted to talk a little bit about what the topics are that are going to be coming up that I thought of, that I want to talk about, that I want to be doing. But then there can also be some changes depending on what you guys want, but also if I have like a spontaneous idea that makes more sense to highlight, I will just put that in the middle. So it's not really set in stone. These are just some ideas, and I just want to let you in on what I've been planning. So apart from today, we're going to be talking about moving, specifically moving countries, or like moving cross country, moving long distance, basically, and what that can do to your mental health, what to look out for, those types of things. Because I feel like we always underestimate. We always say like, oh yeah, I'm organized, I'm planned, I have like my shit together, and then the reality hits and it's something completely different. So I thought it would be interesting to highlight how to make it a little bit easier if possible, and like what things to be aware of so you're not going in naively, like I did. I also wrote down changes in your life, changes within you, and how to navigate those, because we're creatures of habit by nature, I think, and it can get kind of tough to navigate when things are moving and changing and shaping up differently than maybe what we expected that they would be, and how we can kind of marry those two ideas. And then the third thing that I have written down so far is what you can do to find the joy in like mundane things, saying like, what are the little things that we can do for ourselves in daily life to make life a little bit more enjoyable, because I find it very hard as an adult to follow everything that I'm supposed to be doing, or like do all of the things that are, that are duties that I'm committed to, that I'm responsible for, to do all of those things on the regular, while also trying to enjoy my life. It's not like one cancels out the other, but the two don't really always go together, and it's very hard because if you prioritize one, the other might lack, and vice versa. So I really want to try and talk about what we can do in daily life to make it less like that, to try and find like a little bit of joy here and there, without also going broke doing it. Because of course there are ways you can enjoy your daily life a little bit more, but then it's not really always financially responsible. I'm not saying every time, but just in general. I've successfully blabbed for 4 minutes before even starting the topic, so I'm trying to let me start again. So I'm gonna try and keep this as short as I probably can, just to highlight the points that I really want to talk about. By the way, ignore this. It's humid, and I have wavy hair. This is what humidity does to wavy hair, and yes, I did brush it. Anyway, today I thought that we could talk about what it's like to be single in adulthood, what it's like for other adults around us that are single in adulthood, maybe temporarily, maybe for a long time, but what it's like. Because I was talking with my friend about this the other day, and we were just talking about like general things in life decisions whatsoever, and we just were talking about the fact that the older we get, the more we realize how difficult it must be for single people, because oftentimes in a friend group after a certain age, they're the only ones that are still single. And we were discussing it, and she said something that really shook me, which is why I want to make this a topic. She said, like, it must feel awful to be no one's first priority. Because when you're single, especially for a longer time, of course, you are not necessarily someone's first priority. And I think that must feel awful because either you don't have someone that's your first priority, or you do have someone, but it's not, um, the relationship isn't on equal terms. Um, and just to make a disclaimer before we get started, being single is not good or bad. In my opinion, it just really depends on what you make of it and what you want your life to be like, because you get to choose. And obviously, you can't magically make yourself a partner if you're single. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying for some people it can be very beneficial, for other people not so much. So it really depends on the individual person, and how they're feeling. Um, but the first point, that I want to make is that, there are busy schedules all around. What do I mean by this? When we step into adulthood fully, everyone has responsibilities, everyone has their own agendas, everyone has a lot of stuff to take care of, and everyone steps into it differently. Some people have a really busy job where they just are focused on that a lot. Some people have a partner that they want to build a life with, so they're focused on that. Somebody may already, be married and have a husband, wife, whatever, and children, to work in the mix. So the more complicated the lives get, or the more, let's just say, people are involved in someone's life, the more complex their schedule gets. I see it all the time with my friends who have children, how complicated it is to find a time slot in order to just meet for a couple of hours. And that's not a dig on them. I totally get it. But I understand that it's complicated for everybody, not just, people with children, even also people that don't have any responsibilities and are single. They might not always be available, for certain things as much as they maybe want to. Um, but it can be kind of difficult. And I'm looking down at my notes, by the way. It can be kind of difficult for people who have sort of run out of single friends. So if you're like me in your 30s, likely you're the only one, or like one of the only ones, that is still single at that age. Most people have found a partner, or are, looking and are dating somebody. And I feel like these people are the ones, that are still single, that fall through the cracks, in terms of people who are partnered, or people who are married, or people who have children. um, they obviously spend time with their significant other, but then also, their significant others, partners, and whatsoever, and the friend groups kind of merge. And then there's just a bunch of couples, or actually a bunch of married couples, a bunch of married couples with kids, and they obviously spend time together. They spend time with their kids, friends, parents. Naturally, that's just how it goes. But if you don't have any of that framework to go to, then you're kind of stuck with your older friends, or the friends that you've had for a longer time, who now have different priorities, which means that sometimes you're the one person that's kind of falling through, and that is not noticed unless you proactively talk to these people. And that can, over time, I imagine, can be quite rough, um, especially because, and I'm, you know, no hate towards anyone, it's just a statement, but I feel like our single friends that we have around us, they do a lot more for us than we like to realize sometimes. Meaning that when they're invited, to your wedding, they come, they bring gifts, they, try and get involved, they'll support you. When there's children involved, they will come to your children's birthday party, they will bring a gift, they will support you at your baby shower, they will do all of these things that cost them time and money. But oftentimes there is no returning the favor, because people are busy at birthday parties when it's just their friend, because something else is like more important to navigate. And I do understand that, especially with children, that can be difficult. But it still, is kind of difficult if the single friend is always the one that's like giving, that's coming to the parties to support, and then vice versa. There's no really like a lot of interaction. So I just want to highlight that, if your single friend gets a new job, or if your single friend moves and into their dream home or whatever, make sure to celebrate them equally for their milestones, even if it looks different, because we tend to not equalize milestones, but for some person it might be equally as important as getting married, moving into their dream home. So let's focus on equating those. And I'm not saying, of course, you need to, if somebody moves into their dream house, you need to go to the extent that you did when somebody else got married. But I'm just saying, make sure to also celebrate that a little bit. The second point that I want to make is that adult friendships naturally are harder to maintain, and they're heavily built on effort. And that's the point that I was trying to make a little bit in the last point to the end, is also the effort can't be one-sided. Both parties involved have to make an effort in order for the friendship to sustain. So it can't just be based on one person's needs, but it also can't just be a communicative one-way street where one person is always like, hey, do you want to do something? And I know that one person might have more time and they might ask more often, but it's also about interactions in person. Does it feel equal? Do they feel equally like a part of the friendship? Do they feel wanted, needed, whatsoever? If that's not the case, it's just a bad feeling, and then it doesn't make a lot of sense to keep investing. But single friends often, not always, but often, have a harder time finding community, simply because their existing friends that they might have historically couldn't find the time or aren't willing to find the time or whatever it is. And again, no dig on anybody. It's totally reasonable and understandable. But the situation for single people is often like that. You're trying to meet someone to no avail because nobody is available, and nobody has time. And then the encounters that you have with friends, they're getting like less frequent over time, especially where you live, because we also keep forgetting that with age, people decide to change location, people decide to move, people decide to wander off to some other place to live. So the friends that we have where we live might already be more limited than, let's just say, at another point in our lives. And that just leads to single people spending a lot of time on their own, um, even when they don't necessarily want to, because it's also hard, if you are a working adult, to find the energy to always push yourself to go out and do things alone. Like, not everybody's built for that, and not everybody wants to always be doing that. Some people at some point just get tired and then they just don't do anything, which is where the vision came from, that like a lot of single girls, where you can find them, is at home, sitting on their couch, drinking tea, doing self-care, because there's no energy to always be the one to push, because you don't really have the support system. People might suggest, oh, if you're always alone, why don't you get a roommate? I want to say, I think not every single person wants to have a roommate, even if it would kind of eliminate some of the loneliness maybe that sometimes can come with being single. But not everybody's built to share their place. And just because somebody's single doesn't mean that they should necessarily share a place, unless you have somebody with whom you have very common interests and very common like ideas, how to fill your space, how to live in the space, how to do things. So it can work, but it's not necessarily like a thing for everybody to avoid being lonely, because who says that you're going to get along? It might be that that's not working. The third point that I want to make is that friendships are equally important to our health and like well-being and feeling emotionally stable, etc., as a partnership is, or family relations. So for single people, obviously, friendship becomes more important because they don't have other people that can kind of fill the space within their relationships. And of course, also partnered people, married people, they also need their friends. But for single people, the space that's like left out needs to be filled with more social interactions on a friendly basis, just because the more the merrier. And I'm not saying you have to have 20 friends, but like, it's just natural that they want to have more connections to their friends when they don't have a partner also that's involved. And so it's natural that they want to prioritize it. There was a fly on my head. Did you guys see that? Jesus. So as a single person, what can you do to kind of get to where you want to go with your connections? The first thing is you can stay connected. What that means is try to reach out to people, try to, I don't know, call people, text people, whatever, try to really, like, you need to force connections. I'm just saying to, exchange words with people, be connected, stay in touch. Send thoughtful gestures. So if you know that somebody, I don't know, their child has some sort of cold or something, maybe say, hey, I'm thinking of you. Can I bring you guys some soup? Whatever. Make sure the other person feels seen or heard. And then also share the changes that you're going through in your life. Like, make sure to be transparent with people, and be emotionally vulnerable, if needed, in order to really strengthen the connection that you have with other people. This goes both ways, by the way, not just the single friend, but also the other way around. But just as a single friend, it might happen that you are the one who's seeking connection more, so it might fall on your lap more often than others, to make sure that you stay connected and that you are thoughtful and like trying to really, be a good friend to other people. I'm almost done, but let's talk about one more point that I really want to make is there's a lack of friends in general, and that's for married people or partner people, but also for single people. These days, very little amount of people has a big group of friends. And what I mean by that is usually people have a lot of people they're friendly with or people that are acquaintances, but people don't have a lot of friends, especially getting older. Um, there's some research that said that every 7 years you lose about half of your friends, which just means that not every type of friendship that you have in your life is built to last. And it also, means that you have to keep working on it if you want to sustain friendships long term. So I feel like a lot of people have maybe up to 10 good friends, which already is quite a high number. But now imagine that like half of these people are preoccupied with other things in their life, and then three of those people decided to move away. So you have like two friends that have similar lifestyles to you that are compatible, but then everybody has a job, everybody has some sort of responsibility that they need to be taking care of. And it's very, very different to when everybody was in school and you would just see them every day and you were kind of friends by proximity or friends by mutual interest or whatever, but you just had a bigger amount of people to choose from that are in your vicinity. And then, during college or university, same thing. You went to classes with people, you interacted with people at parties, you had like social things where you naturally met people that have similar ideas, similar interests. But then you get out of those systems and you get into work. And if you're really lucky, you can make friends at work. I've been lucky that I've made friends at work, but not every workplace that you're going to work in is a place where you're going to make friends. And not every workplace has the type of people that match your energy for whatever reason. There might be an age gap there, whatever, that makes it difficult. So it's not always a guarantee that you're going to meet people through that. And that comes to my point is that it's hard as an adult to find new connections because the circumstances have changed. That's the original point that I was going to be making. And that leads to a lack of friends and a lack of connection in general. But it's even worse for single people at this point in time, because then, the network that you would need in order to properly fill your time, in order to really make sure that you have enough social exchange, let's just say, is very, very, very limited. And the last thing that I want to say is if you're going to ask for, oh, well, what's the solution? That's the main problem. I don't think that there is a solution that we can kind of formulate that's super black and white to say, oh, do this, do that. This is a thing that you can do. But I think that if people in general and single people can find a way to continue to put themselves out there, force themselves out of the house, force themselves to sometimes do things alone, make sure that they find hobbies and like find communities through that, and just really put effort in, even though it's like exhausting at times. I think that we we can make things better, because even if you don't make friends that you have like a super deep connection with, sometimes interaction is what we can settle for and what we thrive off of every once in a while. I'm saying not as a substitute, but every once in a while. And these momentarily, like these connections that you make momentarily through something, they have a shot of like developing properly over time. You know what I mean? And I want to say, if you're tired from always trying to make connections and like pushing yourself hard to find your people, take a break, breathe. You don't always have to be the one to always be doing everything in order to push forward. But just keep getting up, keep doing it. And then I want to say, take care of your existing friendships. Make sure you put in the same amount of effort as your friends are doing in return, or try. And if that's not possible, have a conversation about how you can, meet everybody's needs a little bit better, maybe. This is a recommendation on my end. I feel like we could all make a little bit more effort to meet people where they're at, in order to avoid that our single people are falling through the cracks and that they, feel like they're completely left out. Sorry for being so jittery and wiggly. My chair is uncomfortable. Anyways, you guys, love you guys. I hope you have a really good day, good week coming up, and we'll continue with our regular scheduled program. See you soon. Bye bye.